Hi, this is Adam Carroll with Justice for All, an NGO that works on behalf of persecuted minorities such as the Rohingya and the Uyghur. We also work to raise awareness about a number of issues. And in this show, UN This Week, we are going to speak about climate change, specifically weaving together climate justice, coexistence concerns, social justice response during the UN's Climate Week, and beyond. While the death toll varies widely, some experts have suggested that the total Native American population size plummeted by more than 90% through war, enslavement, social disruption, and especially pandemic disease, including smallpox and measles. Conflict and oppression continue, of course, not only in the USA, but throughout the world and on almost every continent. So does the pandemic. Though many communities are targeted and affected by disaster, indigenous peoples are often seen to be in the way and therefore extremely vulnerable to displacement and even genocide. The Matinakok and the Munsee Lenape once lived where I live now, and I also believe on the lands where the United Nations stand today. For more information about those lands that you are living on, you can visit a link that we're going to be sharing. Now, to discuss the intersection of climate change and oppression, we are joined today by Nazish, Riaz, and Barbara Love of Sustaining All Life. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Should we be calling Sustaining All Life SAL, or is that too intimate?
You're welcome to do so. We do, actually.
Oh, you do? Okay. SAL was formed in 2014 and has since published many materials addressing the intersection of climate change and oppression. A SAL delegation attended the conferences called COP21 all the way through COP25. These are climate conferences to present tools of mutual support and engaged listening, and also to share perspectives on climate change and oppression. The group is active in numerous climate justice projects around the world, and the philosophical foundation of the work, Re-Evaluation Counseling, is currently practiced in more than 90 countries. Sustaining All Life is an international grassroots organization working to end climate change within the context of ending all divisions among people. There are so many divisions among all people, it seems now anyway, more than ever, both within the United States, for example, and then between nations. We're very glad to have both of you on. Quick bio of Dr. Barbara Love is Professor Emeritus of Social Justice Education, UMass Amherst, who works with individuals and organizations to create the conditions that foster personal, organizational, and societal transformation for a more just society. And Dr. Love works with Sustaining All Life in its work on the climate crisis. Nazish Riaz is a director with a healthcare consulting company where she leads technology transformation projects for healthcare companies to reduce their carbon footprint, improve consumer experience, and reduce cost. She's also a community organizer and leads educational workshops, classes, and small groups with a focus on climate justice, ending war, and ending oppression against Muslims, people of color, women, and migrants. Lots of great stuff there. So welcome again. And I wanted to begin just by asking a little bit about your current priorities. How did you all first form this organization? And maybe how has it maybe changed and grown in the years since 2014? Anyone who wants to answer.
Do you want to start, Nazish?
One of the cool part about Sustaining Our Life, I want to say, that you might not find online is that we actually are, all of us are volunteers with this organization. And sustaining our life is, as you were mentioning about various, is one of the projects of reevaluation counseling. And the project started from this idea that all of us need to do something about the climate change. And each organization or each individual brings their own perspective and capacities to the table. And we, as a organization or a project that's rooted in emotional healing work, think that our work is important in this space for many reasons, because ending oppressions is going to be a key factor in building the movement that we need to build around the world. And then and then how we got involved with the United Nations work and became a somewhat of an accredited NGO, or is also because of the fact that we want to work with not only people just here in the United States of America, but also outside of the US. Yeah, that's how it all started. And Barbara, please go ahead.
I would add the following thoughts to what Nazish said. Thank you, Nazish. Our ultimate overall goal is to create a better world, a world that works well for everyone. That's the ultimate goal of all of our work. We came to an understanding that having a better world, a world that works well for everyone, is predicated on having a world. There is no planet B. And we recognize that we are facing an existential crisis. The climate change poses a threat to humans. Well, actually, it does not pose a threat to the planet. It poses a threat to humans and other living beings on the planet. So hence our title, Sustaining All Life. We are keenly interested in creating the conditions that allows us humans to do the work that is necessary to effectively address the climate crisis, so that we as humans and other living things have a sustainable future on this planet. And we recognize that in order to do this, broad coalitions of many kinds of people will be necessary. No one person, no one group, and no one nation alone can do this work on its own. You heard in the debate last night references to the US participation in the Paris agreements. That was about recognizing that collectively humans can do something about the climate crisis, and that it does require all of us working together. And it recognizes the science that says we are in jeopardy and that we have a limited amount of time to do the work that is necessary to effectively address the climate crisis. So our work, our contribution is in the context of enabling us humans to heal the hurts that get in the way of our being able to establish, maintain, create, hold those relationships, those collaborations, those connections that will allow us to work effectively together to address the climate crisis.
I realize that the NGO community can also have its factions and its politics, its divisions, its jealousies and competition, competing for the same funds, maybe. But also governments, obviously, are often in conflict or competing economically. And so dealing with those forces that are in play, how do you try to create a different dynamic or somehow transcend that level?
We recognize that Thank you. There is work to be done at the organizational level, at the systemic level, at the governmental level. And the work that we do focuses on supporting individuals who can then be effective at these organizational, institutional, at these government levels. So again, our work is in supporting individuals to do the healing work that is necessary, to create the understandings that are necessary, to create the relational skills that are necessary to then be able to go and do that work within the context of organizations, systems, governments, etc.
It's complex. The grassroots side of it, I guess that includes workshops and information sharing. I was wondering if we haven't yet, if we could put on the screen an image from your website of some of the booklets that are in multiple languages. If we could scroll down very slowly. Maybe if you could point out any of these particular brochures or booklets, what they are.
I'm wondering if you're able to put the English language version up, because I won't be able to read, or Nazish, maybe you can do so. I apologize, I am not multilingual in that way. Nazish, go ahead. I don't know if you can read these.
I'm a Spanish speaker, but I can, from the a little bit of what I'm seeing, I can see something. I think one of the, Barbara, I will talk about the Expressing Climate Grief one, which was the workshop you led during the Climate Week. I think that some of the work that, as Barbara was mentioning, is around supporting individuals and supporting ourselves through this process. And the Expressing Climate Grief workshop was about how do we show the world and each other that we are devastated about this climate conundrum that we are in, and also at the same time reclaim the power that we have and make noise about what needs to get done. And then you scroll through a few others that I was just looking at. I think there was one around Indigenous lives, another forum around African voices. There was about a great workshop around the impact of fast fashion on climate. And on this website, there is a area where you can actually go and see the recordings of these workshops. If you are on that page, I led a workshop on the connections between war and climate change as well.
Mm-hmm. Part of what Nazish is pointing out is the reality that there are so many ways, facets, aspects, avenues whereby our energy, our initiative to recognize that we indeed, as individuals and as groups of individuals, can have power to do something about the world that we live in, to do something about climate change. And there are so many ways that this gets interrupted and thwarted. And the range of workshops, forums that we offer provide multiple opportunities for people to see themselves in this work. So Nazish mentioned, for instance, the workshop on climate grief. We recognize that many people recognize, and many people do not recognize, that the realities of the climate crisis and the threat that it poses to us humans has left us with a range of emotions that we don't have many places to either acknowledge or to express. And nevertheless, those unexpressed emotions and that unacknowledged grief can sit on us and can interfere with our ability to feel energized to go and do something about it. So this workshop, for instance, gives people a chance to notice, yes, I have those feelings. And many people have said, yep, I have those feelings, but I just thought it was me. I didn't know that other people had these feelings as well. Or I didn't know what to do about it. Or I just thought
certainly, Yeah, those are very gendered as well, and the expression of feelings and even acknowledgement, and to recognize grief, but also the feeling of powerlessness,
Exactly.
and then anger and fear and all the rest. That's quite powerful, and I think that we see in how emotions like that uh, are obstacles or become an obstacle in, for
Precisely.
example, pandemic policy. You know, it's
Precisely.
not rational at all.
Hmm.
Um, and with the showdown at Standing Rock or other environmental movement uh, landmarks, you know, there's a real sense of drama and catharsis, but then often someone loses and it isn't a healing process at all,
Hmm.
and there's grief there. So I think that it's great that you're paying attention to and you're showing others that dimension of activism. So to sustain activism, I think you've also done some workshops on how to sustain activism that's
Hmm.
healthy. How do you
Let
help
me say,
groups?
let me go ahead and finish the sentence.
Oh, sorry.
Mhm. So, giving people an opportunity to notice those emotions, to express those emotions, and then consequently to be able to reclaim their energy and to reclaim their initiative to engage in climate activism. And yes, we have a range of other workshops looking at racism and the ways that racism interferes with our ability to do the work that needs to be done. Workshops focused on sexism and the way that interferes with our ability to do the work that needs to be done. And workshops for activisms, how to, some strategies for engaging in activism. A workshop providing an opportunity for activists to notice the ways in which their work often leads to burnout and what they can do to avoid burnout so that they can be in the struggle for the long term, because we need to be able to sustain ourselves as activists. There are workshops for young people to get a chance to look at the ways in which both the adultism affects young people and their ability to be effectively involved in the movement, and opportunities to show the work that young people have done around climate activism. And then Nazish mentioned a range of forums: African voices, Pacific Islander voices, indigenous voices, both getting a chance to look at what members of these communities have done to effectively initiate action regarding climate change, but also a chance for them to talk about the ways in which the climate crisis has affected their communities. I mean, listening to their voices, we get to hear in very personal terms about the ways in which the lack of rain or too much rain at the wrong times or in the wrong places has affected their communities. How the encroaching desert or the pollution of lakes and rivers or the tsunamis or the hurricanes has affected their lands. Loss of community has turned their people into climate refugees, and the devastating effects that this is having on their communities and on their peoples. And opportunities for them to both share their stories as well as get a chance to heal from those effects so that they can reclaim initiative to effectively engage in climate activism.
Um, yeah, communication uh, is very interesting because even not on Zoom, but just in person, you know, we all are kind of programmed to communicate and to take in information in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and we get stuck in our patterns. And you know, for me, I was recognizing that I had interrupted you without even realizing it, and I was thinking, well, what did I do at that moment? And I was charging ahead because I thought I knew where the conversation was going, and I was in a hurry to get there. And so you know, it in fact, listening to each other
Mm-hmm.
then allows a different dynamic to take place instead of, I mean, I wasn't trying to win an argument, but I was like trying to get there.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a very particular well habit or but we all have the
Well,
things we do.
if I could just insert, thank you for noticing that, and thank you for mentioning it, and to also recognize this is one of the things that people get a chance to notice. For instance, in our workshop on sexism, has to do with the ways in which all of us live in societies that systematically condition us into certain behavior patterns, often without our conscious awareness and therefore without our intention. And so these behavior patterns show up in our relationships without our intention, without our awareness, but often with the consequence of interfering with and negatively impacting the relationships we're trying to develop, the coalitions we're trying to build. And very often, the coalitions, you talked about the divisions that sometimes occur between activist group or community or grassroots groups. And often it is because those behavior patterns that have been installed on us by societies that are characterized by various oppressions: racism, sexism, classism, adultism, anti-Muslim oppression, anti-Semitism, ageism, nationalism, linguicism. These, without our awareness, results in our behaving in ways that interfere with our alliances, our coalitions, our relationship building. And to the extent that we can heal from those hurts, we increase our ability to both recognize when it is happening, interrupt it when it is happening, and thus increase the effectiveness of our alliances and coalitions and movement building.
So right now, what we have on the screen, we jumped the gun again a little bit, but this is from your website, and I think it's a very interesting quote. Every adult in every present society has been conditioned through the imposition of distress patterns into functioning in both oppressed and oppressor roles. And everyone, may be both. And so our awareness of that complexity, it can be liberating.
Yes, that is our belief.
Before we talk more,
and part of our theory of change, this fundamental understanding that paying attention to those relationships will be a key part of how we enact change in the society.
Well, regarding the theory of change and even the workshops that you do, I was wondering if you could describe for viewers what it's like to go to one of these COP or COP conferences and how you interact. How does it work? Maybe Nazish or Barbara. Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Simon, I'll add in. You go ahead.
I'm sorry.
And then I'll add in.
Okay.
I think if you start, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a very interesting and I must say exciting proposition. When going to the COP, our goal in every case has been to share the theory and the tools of our work with as many people as possible, because our basic understanding is that building relationships, building alliances, building broad coalitions of people will be key to effectively doing something about climate change. And so we try to make as much contact as we can with as many different people, organizations, groups as we can. We offer as many workshops and forums as we can. We will actually, typically we're given a few slots as part of the official programming. And in addition to that, we will often hire spaces so that we can offer other workshops to invite people in so that we can share our work, our thinking, our theory with them. Very often we end up with quite a large following, because when people come to one workshop on Sunday or Monday, they will often come back Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to other workshops. So we try to create as many spaces as we can for people to get this theory and to get to this process. And we try to support them in their efforts to take it back to their home communities. Because if you find it useful, then please share it with others. Share it with your home organization. Share it with people in your home community. So our work there, we work very hard for the week or the week and a half or the 2 weeks that we're there, because we want to share and reach as many people as we can. People who find it useful, we want them to have it. If people don't find it useful, that's also equally fine. Our goal is simply to make sure that it is available.
And Nazish, did you want to add in?
Exciting part, and there are key pieces of, as Barbara was mentioning, there are some practices that we carry with us, and language liberation is one of them. I think it's very exciting to do these workshops, not only in English, but also in multiple languages. We try to, for example, when we were in Morocco and I had the opportunity to be part of a delegation along that was led by Barbara, 2016, I think now, 4 years ago, can't believe it.
Can you believe it?
And sure that the workshops were not only, a lot of us were English speakers, but some of the delegation members were Arabic speakers as well as French speakers. So we, not having the workshops and our tools and resources be available in multiple languages to multiple communities, and honestly speaking, to the part of the world, to the places where there is a need for these resources. Like us living in the United States of America in a different type of a comfortable life might not think about this stuff being as useful. But as Barbara was mentioning, people who are on the front lines, and I think you up front in the beginning said that there are people who are in the front lines. So me as a person who grew up in Pakistan, I can't deny climate change. One of the things that I found interesting when I came to the US in 2006 was people denied climate change. So I think that for us living in a place where it is easy to not pay attention, we might not find any of this useful because it's not at our door yet. But I personally use the tools of sustaining our life to think about what will Pakistan be like in 10 years. We are already running out of fresh water, and it's scary. It's scary for me, it's scary for my family, it's scary for people living in Pakistan and many other countries in that region. So having a presence of this type at an event like COP, which is held by an organization that if it is not, if some countries don't think about United Nations as a useful organization, but for a lot of the world, this is a multilateral forum that the people and countries of the world come to, and that's the place where we want to be there with everybody. So if someone needs this resource right before their next meeting, they can have these tools available right there.
Let me tell you what was an interesting story for me about using this tool in the way that Nazish has just described. We were in Morocco in November 2016, which means that some of us were on the bus on the way to the meeting venue from the hotel when we got the news about the US election. Okay. I was on a bus with, I don't remember how many people can get on a bus, but if you can imagine a huge bus with many people, mostly not USers, people from Asia, people from the Middle East, people from Africa, many people, and we got the news, and the feeling on the bus was quite extraordinary. You could hear people sobbing, you could hear people crying, you could hear sighs of anguish, actually. And what I decided to do was to share the tool then, to give people a chance to talk about what this felt like for them. Of course, I had to hold on to what it felt like for me while I listened to people from all those different places talk about what it felt like for them and what they thought that those results would mean for their country or for their community or for their people, and give them a chance to express their, I don't know which audience this is going out to, but I'll just say it was their grief and sorrow about what they thought was coming up for them and their people as a result of this direction that the U.S. was taking. But again, it was a way to use this tool of our listening to people, giving people a chance to listen to each other, to be listened to, but to notice that the feelings that they have, they will carry with them. And if they don't get a chance to do something with those feelings, then they will interfere with their effective functioning in the things that are coming up in their lives ahead of them.
That reminds me, I was in Peace Corps in 1980 in the election of Ronald Reagan, and I couldn't believe it was true because I was there, trying to connect with Moroccans. I was there for 2 years, but we heard the news. We couldn't believe it. So I can relate to that Moroccan context, but also the need to process, and we still have that need. And it's still also, just on the level of polarization, a very broken country with many problems facing us, including climate change and social justice concerns like oppression. So it's all linked together. I was wondering, last year, I participated in a workshop that was co-organized by your group, I think, together with Action Corps. And because my group, we just had 3 of us or 4 of us who had attended from our group. And then there was a very enthusiastic, larger number of people who were involved and who knew already the approach that you take. And so I found that the event was very effective, but also very emotionally charged. And I think the 3 of us from my group were a little bit intimidated because we didn't expect it. We recognized that it was very effective, and one of us got up and started testifying very emotionally, but we didn't really come there for that. And so we thought, oh dear, what happened? What is this? And so I think that it planted a good seed in us, but at the time we weren't quite sure we were ready. So I was wondering if you sometimes get that response, because culture also comes into, and people have their roles that they're playing and all of that.
Yes, you mentioned culture comes into it, habit patterns and life experience comes into it. Gender often comes into it. Not only does gender come into it, but people in certain levels and positions within organizations who have been trained deeply to believe that their effectiveness depends on not showing emotion. And this is very deeply embedded in the culture. You remember when to show emotion at all would end someone's political career here in the US. Remember the presidential candidate whose wife was ill and who showed a tear on the courthouse steps, and boom, his presidential aspirations were ended just by showing a tear about his wife's illness. So yes, it is deeply embedded in the culture not to show emotion, not to recognize, not to acknowledge that you have them. And if you aren't expecting this and you come into a session and someone is now creating the space for you to have those emotions, it can be off-putting. And we do try to, in our write-ups of the events, share enough information so that people have some little sense of what it is they're coming into. And we also, we're getting better and better at this, setting up the session so that people are not overwhelmed by this opportunity to notice the emotions, to feel them, and to express them. But also hoping that people get a clear sense from the experience of the utility of being able to do this, of the helpfulness of being able to do this, and the ways in which it is both empowering, enabling, and energizing of our activism to be able to do this.
Certainly emotional healing has to be part of this work. I was wondering if either of you, maybe Nazish, if you wouldn't mind commenting on the text. This is from your website. Yeah.
I'll say one thing about what Barbara was talking about and also what you were saying earlier. And not only that, that a lot of it's society and habits, but also the oppressive structures, the structures around us that surveil us, right? Showing emotions or really what we are feeling can be dangerous, right? It's not that easy to be honest and open to a group of people who you just met. So it's not only that I can totally, and I do remember that workshop and I was part of that workshop, and I can totally understand why the other two members felt or how they might have felt. And it gets to a point where I myself, being a Muslim, have to think about my space a lot, about what I have to say, what I can say. And it's not just true for me, but a lot of people in our societies at large. United States of America isn't the only country that is surveilling. I think almost now we know that almost every country surveils their population at different rates, and the consequences are different for different people. But I can totally relate to the intimidation piece. But as for me, staying with this process helped. So I can now sometimes be a little less afraid and talk about things more publicly. And if you want me to talk about the banner, I will.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just curious about what the distress patterns are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've been throughout this conversation, we have been talking about those a little bit, especially when we were thinking about let's say take the example of sexism, which is very easy and most people understand, or male domination or patriarchy. As we grow up in a society that's filled with these type of oppressions, we end up acquiring either the oppressor distress patterns or oppressed distress patterns of domination, patterns of greed, or patterns of wanting to do things my way, control patterns. And then, and as the previous banner basically was saying, that we play those both roles, right? Sometimes we are in the oppressed role and other times we are in oppressor role. And through this process, we get to look at them. And like many other emotional healing processes or educational processes, this is as much about learning, it's also about unlearning. So as part of this work, what we are doing is we are trying to get rid of the patterns that get in the way of us working together. So for example, I'll say about myself, somebody who immigrated to the United States of America and has resources around me that I could figure out the immigration system and got to where I am today. I can have certain types of patterns that make me in that oppressor role, but I don't get to act those patterns out and also not think that somebody who doesn't have a proper immigration status is less than me or I'm better than somebody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So to summarize a little bit of what Nazish said, we end up, because of the oppression that is built into the society, with behaving as though we think that we're smarter than people of another group, or believing that we are more entitled to a particular level of participation than members of another group, or that we, members of this group, can make decisions on behalf of another group. Men assuming that they should make decisions about women's bodies, for instance, or who can speak and when they can speak. If I could use the example that we talked about just a little while ago, if it's okay, about who can interrupt whom. Adults are more likely to interrupt young people than young people are likely to interrupt adults. Men are more likely to interrupt women than women are to interrupt men. We only had to look at the debate last night to see an example of that. White people are more likely to interrupt people of color than people of color are to interrupt white people, and so on. And what we understand is that this is not a personal failing of an individual man or an individual white person or an individual adult. And we don't say that you're a bad person because that behavior pattern is exhibited. What we recognize is that these are behavior patterns built into the culture. And if you live in the culture, then you pick up those behavior patterns because you live in them. And part of what we want is for people to be able to increasingly recognize those behavior patterns. How can I recognize when I'm behaving in ways that indicate I think my thinking is better than your thinking, and therefore you should follow my thinking because my thinking is better, as member of one group versus members of another group? How can I increase my ability to recognize when my thinking and when my behavior follows some of those, we call it distress patterns. These are things that are built into the culture that help to maintain the oppressive system. And the more we can recognize it, and the more we can heal from it, the more we can interrupt it and let go of those behavior patterns.
With that, we're just going to take a 10-second break or for our station identification. We do that. So this is Adam Carroll at Justice for All. We'll be right back.
Okay. I'm going to get some water.
Oh, it's very quick. Okay, Adam Carroll here from Justice for All, and we're discussing the intersection of climate justice and also oppression, ending oppression. And our guests are Nazish Riaz and also Barbara Love from Sustaining All Life. And it's been very interesting discussion. We've just got about 10 minutes at most. So just to begin to approach this, I mean, we're talking about recognition of distress patterns and patterns within ourselves that create obstacles to progress in society as well as in ourselves, that make interpersonal relations a mess, basically. And we see how polarized our societies are. And that these emotions are also being manipulated by the powers that be. But self-awareness can empower us to resist that, or at least to recognize that and call that out when it happens.
Absolutely.
So I think this is a great approach as far as trying to empower people to make the change they wish to see. And just if you wanted to add a little bit more about what your goals are for the near future. Are there any particular campaigns? Of course, speaking of campaigns, there's the U.S. election, and there may be some incremental change in the future, but we don't know yet. So what are your thoughts about, the work going forward? Nazish.
This is lifelong work, and we hope to continue doing this work. Relationships are lasting work, they last forever. So our objective is one, which is alliance building, unity, and ending of oppressions. We're not going to stop until we end all divisions and oppressions among our people. Specifically with regards to sustaining our life, we are going to do some, we are participating via Zoom online activities for in November. So if folks are interested, you can follow us on Facebook or our website. You can join some of those events. And climate justice work is and ending oppression work will be at the center of our activities going forward.
Mm-hmm. We recognize that these skills, this healing work, supports individuals to heal from the oppression, to heal from the hurts that they have sustained as a result of the oppression that's built into the society, to reclaim their initiative, to be energized to engage in changing the world around them. And we recognize that it applies to any aspect of life toward which one wishes to direct their attention. Sustaining All Life is specifically focused on climate change. Sister organization is United to End Racism, which is about helping people focus their energies on ending racism. And there are many aspects of societal change toward which we can direct our energy and attention. Sustaining All Life is our particular and specific campaign focused on climate change because we recognize the existential urgency of that work.
Well, this is inspiring work. It's absolutely essential. And I hope that we'll be able to speak again about upcoming campaigns and opportunities to partner. Without strong allyship and partnership building, we really face an enormous challenge, and it's hard not to go into depression about the enormity of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that, of course, is what community is for us to show support and hopefully vision so that we can move forward. So let's pray on it and also do whatever we need to do. But it's been a pleasure speaking with you both.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you very much for joining UN this week. And
thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and share our work. And our with you.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. And bye for now. We'll see you viewers next Tuesday.